Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today, it's the 20th of November, and we're on page 52 of the magazine, and we're talking the hoop skirt. It's the second day of a 2-day article, and the title is The Hoop Skirt, Balancing High Fashion with Comfort and Ease of Use.
好，我们的中文标题是跟昨天中文标题一样，群撑撑起美丽的一片天。
So yesterday we talked about the hoop skirt being at its height in the Victorian era, which is the second half of the 19th century to the very beginning of the 20th century. And they're called hoop skirts throughout the article. But the fact that they were most popular then doesn't mean that that was the only time we had this kind of skirt. In fact, we've had skirts that were reinforced by wood or cane to create like a shape around you as early as the 16th century. So it's not a new fashion idea, but it became most prevalent in women's fashion, like from the rich all the way down to the middle class to the poor in the late 19th century.
好，所以这个群撑呢，其实我们昨天有讲，在这个维多利亚时代很多，但是当然它并不是说那个时候才发明的，那所以它之前就已经有了，那只是说在19世纪的英国呢，后来变得非常流行而已。
So today we're going to talk about a little bit of the earlier versions of the hoop skirt, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the construction of the hoop skirt. So let's go in. The hoop skirt's earliest form, known as the farthingale, was intended to give a woman's outfit a cone-like shape. Made from whalebone or cane sewn into fabric, the farthingale spread from Spain around 1545 to the rest of Europe and persisted in most European courts until 1620 with variations. One of these variations was the French farthingale, which was often tilted upward at the back with the assistance of a padded pillow to give the illusion of a longer torso. Meanwhile, the Italian farthingale was a smaller and more delicate version that sat evenly at the hips. During the 17th and 18th centuries, women used panniers or side hoops to widen their skirts. The earlier form of the pannier took a shape similar to that of a 19th century crinoline, wide and domed. As panniers evolved, they extended primarily at the sides while remaining relatively flat at the front and back. This style was particularly favored during the Baroque and Rococo eras, showcasing detailed woven patterns, elaborate decorations, and luxurious embroidery. Finally, in the mid-19th century, a hoop skirt design called the crinoline was introduced. The crinoline featured steel hoops sewn into petticoats, making it lighter and easier to wear compared to earlier hoop skirt designs. The crinoline was popular and became a symbol of femininity in Victorian England. Subsequently, a smaller version of the crinoline, called the crinolette, offered even more practicality while maintaining a fashionable look. The evolution of hoop skirts reflects changing fashion trends and has left a lasting impact on European fashion from the Renaissance to the Victorian era. Okay, so the hoop skirt's earliest form was known as the farthingale, and it was intended to give a woman's outfit a cone-like shape. I don't think it was the point. The shape wasn't the point. I think the point of the farthingale was to spread your skirts out so people could see the beautiful embroidery on them, and also to keep it away from your feet so that when you walked, you weren't like constantly tripping over your skirts. Because at this time, especially in the very upper classes, your skirts were incredibly and beautifully embroidered, and if they were just hanging flat, you couldn't really see it. So I really think that the farthingale, the point of it at first was to be like, hey, let's really look at this skirt. And then it sort of happened to be a cone-like shape.
好，所以我们先看这个句子。他说这个群撑呢，它最早的形式 earliest form known as 称之为 farthingale， 那就是筋骨群撑。那它 was intended to， 它目的是要 怎么样呢？要 give a woman's outfit， 让一个女人的她的套装、她的服装有一个 cone-like shape， 有一个锥形的形状，那就呈现锥形。不过这个 Angela 老师说，他认为，或者是我觉得也蛮有道理的，就是可能重点不是要让它变成锥形的形状，那个只是结果。重点是说那个时候的这个上层社会，他们的裙子上面都有很漂亮的刺绣。那如果说一般的裙子垮垮的，你看不到那个刺绣，所以他们把它撑起来，让你好好的欣赏那个刺绣。然后另外一方面呢，可能他走路也比较方便，同时呢，它可以我觉得另外一个对我来讲蛮重要的功能，就是它可以形成一个 barrier， 就让这个登徒子这个不能够随便上去就这个动手动脚的，他还要先爬上去那 cone shape 才能够做到这件事情。不过 anyway， 就是我们可以知道这个 farthingale 它有很多的功能。
Probably all of these things were true in some proportion for each person.
Yeah， 也许这些原因大概都是真的 ，Yeah， 都是对的。
So these skirts, these underskirts or petticoats, were made from whalebone or cane sewn into fabric. So there'd be a set of hoops, and then you would sew them onto a piece of fabric that was a skirt. And then you would put it on like a skirt, and then you would put the overskirt on over it. And then voila, you had your beautiful spread out skirt. And this farthingale started off in Spain because Spain was the center of the world at the time. The Spanish Empire was at its height, and everyone was like, ooh, if it's Spanish, it's good. And so it spread from Spain around 1545 to the rest of Europe. And it persisted. It hung around in most European courts until 1620 with variations. Like people kept doing it, and they had various versions of it. They weren't looking exactly the same, but they were all basically a farthingale.
所以我们可以看到，先来一个分词构句 made from， 它是从哪里做出来，用什么材料做的呢？是由这金鱼的骨头，或者是 cane 是藤条做出来的。那这金骨或藤条呢，它们是 sewn into fabric， 是把它缝到那个布料里面去，是这么做的。那这样的一个 farthingale， 它 spread from 这个它传播，从哪里传播出来呢？从西班牙传播出来，大概是1545年的时候 spread from Spain to the rest of Europe， 传到欧洲其他的地方。然后呢，接下来就 persisted， 就坚持下去。这跟我们前一课看到那个 endured 意思差不多，就是持续下去的。在大多数的欧洲国家，它就生根了，这个 fashion 就持续下去了，一直到1620年。那1620年就是5月8号登陆这个新大陆的那一年。那大概就让你知道这个历史大概这样子。当然这两件事情没有关系啦，只是时间上的这样子。那 with variations 就是有一些，当然中间会有一些变化，不是一直都是同样的形式。
So one of these variations was the French farthingale, which was often tilted upward at the back. So if something is tilted, it means that one part is higher than the other. So the upward part, the higher part, was at the back over your butt with the assistance of a padded pillow. And this is not the only time in history where you'd wear like a little pillow padded over your butt in order to make your skirt stick out and to basically give the illusion of a longer torso in front. So it made the front of you look longer and slimmer to have your butt sticking out more at the back. It's an illusion, though. It's just proportion. There's a lot of human clothes throughout history is about trying to make the body look cooler in a certain way by having a certain shape to your clothes.
好，所以 one of these variations 那这些变化里面有一个就是这个法式的筋骨裙撑。那它怎么样呢？它常常是 tilted upward， tilt 就是倾斜， upward 是向上，所以它常常会向上倾斜。在哪里向上倾斜呢？在背部向上倾斜。那怎么样让它向上倾斜呢？With the assistance of， 它靠什么帮忙一下？靠一个 padded pillow， 一个有软垫的一个枕头帮你撑起来，这样子你这个后面臀部那里呢就会向上倾斜这个裙子哈。那这样就可以 give the illusion of， 它就可以营造什么错觉呢？它营造的错觉就是一个 a longer torso 就是躯干，除了头部跟四肢之外，那个躯干感觉起来你的躯干就会比较长，这个就是造成一个错觉。
Meanwhile, the Italian farthingale was a smaller and more delicate version of the French one. So it still was trying to give you a longer torso, but this one, it sat more evenly at the hips. There wasn't one part that was higher, and it was smaller, so it wasn't as exaggerated.
那同时呢，意大利的这个意式的筋骨裙撑呢，它是比较小。 那也比较 delicate 比较精巧一点。那它是怎么样？它是 set evenly at the hips 它会这个均匀的就固定在或者均匀的坐落在你的臀部上面，不像这个法式的后面会翘起来，它这个意式的呢就是比较平均一点。
So during the 17th and 18th centuries, women used panniers or side hoops to widen their skirts. So these were basically like a basket made out of cane or out of wood strips. And they basically would tie these baskets on the left and right separately on their body. And then the best thing about panniers is that they would put these giant pockets inside them. You could put a whole loaf of bread in there. You could keep several books in there. During the French Revolution, women would just carry secret documents in their panniers all the time. And, men weren't allowed to poke around in there. And so sending a woman through the front lines was a good way to get your secret messages through. So, yeah, these side hoops were very useful. And I think I wouldn't mind that style coming in. Although it would make it hard to get through the subway if you had these giant panniers on you.
Yeah, 我们先来看这个句子。他说在17、18世纪的时候呢，女性她们使用的东西叫做panniers， 就是这个帕尼耶裙撑，或者是简单一点叫 side hoops， 就是边边的这个裙撑，来 widen their skirts， 来让他们裙子变宽。那这个所谓的 panniers 基本上就是两个篮子一样的东西，左右各一个，就可以把你的裙子撑开来了。那这个的好处就是它里面可以放很多东西，可以放面包，可以放文件。那刚刚这个 Angela 就说，这个法国大革命的时候，他们有时候会请这个妇女穿着这个 panniers 去这个传送文件因为那个等于说文件都放在她裙子里面，那个士兵也不好说收他们裙子里面，所以这也是他们想出来的一个办法。
The earlier form of the pannier took a shape similar to that of a 19th century crinoline, wide and domed. So if you looked at a woman standing in this kind of skirt, it just looked like they were standing in the middle of a dome. The whole skirt was a dome.
Yeah, 那这个pannier 它比较早的形式 took a shape， 它有这个形状，就是它的形状是怎么样 similar to 跟什么的形状很像呢 similar to that of 那个 that 就是指 shape， 它跟19世纪的这个 crinoline 的形状很像。那什么叫很像呢？它们都是 wide， 都是很宽，然后呢 domed 就是指它是像个圆顶一样的，所以你可以想象那个屋顶那个圆顶呢，那个人就在那个圆顶的这个尖端，这样一个上半身这样凸出来，那其他就是一个像圆顶一样的一个东西。
And then as the shape of panniers evolved or changed slightly over time, they extended primarily at the sides while remaining relatively flat at the front and back. So in that case, it was just like, it was wide but shallow.
Yeah, 所以呢，这随着这个 panniers 它 evolved， 随着它的演化，那他们就 extended 就往外伸展，但主要 primarily 是在边缘，就左右两边往外伸展。那前后 the front and back 是相对来讲是 remaining flat， 相对来讲是比较维持还是比较平的所以那个时候的裙撑呢是它往左右撑出去，可是前后并没有往外特别撑多少。
So this style was particularly favored during the Baroque and Rococo eras, showcasing detailed woven patterns, elaborate decorations, and luxurious embroidery, because basically the front of your skirt was just like a giant picture panel.
Yeah, 因为这样子的话呢，因为左右伸展出去，前后是平的，所以感觉起来你好像是穿着一个画布一样，宽宽的画布一样。所以他说呢，这个风格呢是特别的受到大家的喜爱 ，was particularly favored。在这个巴洛克时期，还有这个洛可可时期。那巴洛克时期大概是17世纪到18世纪中期，那个时候欧洲文化跟艺术的这样的一个时期。那特点是它有丰富的装饰，还有情感丰富的表达，还有这戏剧化的风格。那这个 Rococo 这个洛可可时期呢，就比它在它之后，在巴洛克之后，大概是18世纪中期到晚期的欧洲艺术风格。那它强调是优雅、轻盈，还有呢装饰性。那它可以反映出贵族生活的奢华跟精致，所以在这两个时期。那接下来他再告诉你更多的这个讯息，在这两个时期它特别受到欢迎，因为它可以 showcasing 就是 exhibiting 或者是 displaying， 它可以展现 detailed woven patterns， 所以刚刚我们就提到它可以展现很细节的展现出来编织的花样，还有呢 elaborate很繁复的 decorations 一些装饰，还有 luxurious embroidery 还有很这个奢华的一些刺绣 都在你的裙子上面，所以要好像是到处展览一样，你就出去的时候就裙子一穿，好像就是个展览的一个画布一样。
And then between these paragraphs, there was a period of time where skirts and dresses got relatively simple. There was like a naturalistic vogue for a while, and skirts were simply like empire-waisted dresses were just hanging down from your waist simply, and there was no trying to make the skirt stick out. And that happened for a while. But then people went back to having these cage-like crinolines underneath dresses. And so that happened in the mid-19th century when the hoop skirt design called the crinoline was introduced.
好，所以呢，这个中间经过的一段时间，那段时间呢，这个裙撑好像没有那么流行。
Like the Regency period.
OK， 好，这个摄政王时代哈，那可能就没有那么流行。那时候裙子可能比较简单。那后来呢 ，finally 到了这个19世纪中期的时候，有一种这个裙撑的设计，被称为 crinoline 的这种设计呢 ，was introduced 就被引入了。
And so the crinoline featured steel hoops sewn into petticoats. So instead of having cane or wood, they would use the steel hoops because the benefit of steel is that it wouldn't break if you sat on it wrong like a wood hoop would. And so it was also lighter than the wood and easier to wear compared to the earlier hoop skirt designs because more flexible.
好，所以 the crinoline 它怎么样 featured 它的特色是 steel hoops 钢所做出来钢丝做的这个 hoops， 那它是一样 sewn into petticoats， 它把它缝到这个女性的衬裙里面去，那这样就会使得它 lighter 比较轻一点，没有像木头那么重，还有呢还会 easier 比较容易可以 wear 可以穿戴。那跟什么比起来呢？跟早期的这个 hoop skirt designs 比起来，它现在比较轻也比较好穿。
So the crinoline was popular and became a symbol of femininity in Victorian England. Femininity. What a word.
就女性特质，所以呢，或者这个女性化啊，所以那这种 crinoline 它是非常受欢迎，然后呢，在这个维多利亚时期的英国变成了一个女性的特质的一个象征。
Subsequently, or after that, a smaller version of the crinoline called the crinolette offered even more practicality while maintaining a fashionable look. I think the crinolette was just shorter. It would hold out the top of the skirt without having it hang all the way down.
所以呢 subsequently 就随后后来 a smaller version 就是一个比较小的一个版本 crinoline 比较小的一个版本，然后呢 which is called 被称为 the crinolette。 那这个 L-E-T-T-E 这个常常就是一个小的字尾，所以就是小版的缩小版的 crinoline。那这样的一种新的这种 smaller version 呢，它 offered 它提供 even more 提供更多的 practicality 就实用性， while 同时它有 maintaining 它有维持的一个 fashionable look 一个时尚的外观。
The evolution of hoop skirts reflects changing fashion trends and has left a lasting impact on European fashion from the Renaissance to the Victorian era. We even had a little mini revival when the 50s hoop skirts came back in the 20th century.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was, there was crinolines and then there was hoop skirts. They did both.
Wow.
But it was a very short trend. It's like 10 years maximum.
所以20世纪其实也有大概10年左右的时间，这个风潮又复苏了。所以我们看到这个地方他讲呢 the evolution of hoop skirts 就是裙撑的演化 reflects 它反映了 changing 就是不断改变的日新月异的 fashion trends 时尚的风潮，而且呢它留下了一个 has left a lasting impact on， 那这也是一个很常用的一个语块，大家也是直接把它学起来， has left a lasting impact on something 就是在某个东西上面留下了这个长远的影响，这个 lasting 就是持续的 enduring 或者是 continuing or remaining for a long time， 所以留下了长远的影响。所以他们在哪里留下了长远的影响呢？在这个欧洲的时尚，从 the Renaissance从这个文艺复兴时期一直到 Victorian era， 这两个时期我们可以这个简单讲一下。 Renaissance 就大家都知道文艺复兴时期，这个大概是14世纪到17世纪初期的一个欧洲文化运动。那在艺术上面他们是追求古典文化的复兴，所以叫文艺复兴嘛，还有重现。那同时他强调人文主义 强调自然主义还有科学发展。那 Victorian era 这个是英国史上很重要的，或者19世纪世界史上很重要的一个时期。这个大概是1837年到1901年英国女王维多利亚统治期间，也泛指这段时间的社会文化特征。像维多利亚时期我们立刻想到就是工业革命，还有英国的殖民扩张，还有呢整个道德风尚的改变，这个都跟维多利亚时期有关。
Yes, so we have some questions for you now. We're going to test you. The first one is, what is the day one passage mainly about? So what was yesterday's talk mainly about?
好，所以第一天的文章主要是关于什么呢？
The answer is D, the history of a type of clothing.
好，答案是 D， 就是一种服装的历史。
And number 2, according to the day one passage, what is not an advantage of wearing a hoop skirt?
那根据第一天的文章，以下哪一个不是穿着这个裙撑的好处呢？
The answer is A. It's not serving as a fire-resistant fabric in case of fire. This is the opposite of the truth.
所以 A 是不对的，因为 A 说在火灾的时候它可以作为防火布料，不对因为正好相反，它非常易燃所以要小心不要着火。
And number 3, according to the day 2 passage, which of the following statements is true?
好，那根据第二天的文章，以下哪一个叙述是正确的？
The answer is A. Farthingales came in various forms.
答案是 A. 筋骨裙撑有各种形式。
And number 4, look at the following picture. What kind of hoop skirt is it?
那请看下面的图片这是什么样类型的裙撑呢？
Well, we have a choice of the crinoline, the side hoop, the crinolette, and the French farthingale, and I want to call this the panniere because that's what it is. But if you look at the article, it also says that the panniere is called B, the side hoop. So that was tricky, and the answer is B.
Yep, 好，所以答案是 B， 它是这个side hoop， 因为我们讲 side hoop 它是往两边发展，左右两边各有一个好像篮子一样的东西往外撑，所以我们看它是这样子。然后呢，它前后是相对比较扁，所以它左右向外撑，前后相对扁，所以看起来这应该就是 B, the side hoop。So
that's all we have for you on hoop skirts. It's one of the sillier sort of trends in fashion history, but it's a very interesting silhouette. And every time you see a Disney movie, they're basically the heroine is in some version of a hoop skirt. So it's like definitely a look that has sort of seeped into like popular consciousness of what a fancy dress should look like.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're interested in looking at it more, go and look at the historical costuming people. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, we're done here for today and hope you join us again for more Ivy English. Until then, bye-bye.